Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another amazing young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi everyone, my name is Elina Ashimbayeva. I'm 27 and at the moment I'm calling in from beautiful Auckland, New Zealand. And originally I am from Kazakhstan in Central Asia, and I've been here for a few years now in New Zealand. My story really evolves around storytelling as well, just like this show. A big part of what I'm doing at the moment is telling stories of women and gender diverse people in New Zealand. And it kind of, I think, all the things in life intertwine to really lead you to where you are. Similar thing happened with me, I guess, is through all the work that I've been doing in the social sector, the government sector, around diversity and representation and culture. One thing that I really stuck with me for a long time is really feeling, maybe it's a millennial thing, really feeling like I'm not good enough, really feel like I need to do more. I feel like I need to do, whether it's doing more in the social sector, whether it's doing different things, like how do I contribute enough, and constantly feeling like, you can do all these things, but you will only be worth it when or if. And it's this really weird feeling, right? That doesn't let you feel your full self, doesn't let you feel um like present and grounded in your body. So I think Storyo was born really out of this reason of, let me ask all these amazing people around me, all these amazing women, gender diverse folks, migrants from all different communities that I really admire and that I'm really inspired by. Do they also feel like they're not good enough sometimes? Do they also feel like they need to do more, or do they know what they're doing? Because again, those kind of feelings really ate up a lot of my headspace of, needing to know the course, needing to know to do more, needing to always constantly be productive and efficient and effective. And I mean, you can guess what everyone said once I started asking, you know, about their vulnerable parts and about their stories and their humanity, and how much of that influenced their journey, and how actually none of us really know what we're doing. So through sharing stories, initially it was a personal pursuit, I guess, of figuring out how do all these amazing people around me that I would never judge for not doing more, do they feel the same as I do? And yes, the answer was yes. So I guess at the moment, but I'm trying to see how do we spread that feeling of actually collectively, a lot of us don't know what we're doing. A lot of us, most of us, don't know exactly what to do, or feel like we might not be doing enough, and that's okay. Um, and if it's a collective shared feeling, then hopefully we can collectively say goodbye to it. Yeah, so it's been me sharing the stories.
Absolutely fantastic. Now, is storytelling part of your culture? You're the first person from Kazakhstan that I have interviewed.
Yes.
Is this something that you brought with you to New Zealand?
Oh, that's a beautiful question that I haven't thought about um, too much. I mean, we are definitely a storytelling culture back at home in Kazakhstan. A lot of the I think what I probably brought with myself, which is translates differently to the work that I do, but it's a lot of passion and drive. Back home, everything kind of happens on a higher emotional level than here in New Zealand, for example. In Western countries, people have very strong emotions, very positive or negative towards things. So I feel like that's almost a superpower when it's directed in a good contribution way, when you are really passionate versus you just kind of get by. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that's something that I brought. I don't know about storytelling specifically. You know, I was 16 when I moved, so I do feel like I probably need to go back to reconnect a little bit more with my own culture and roots and with storytelling from back home. Yeah.
That's interesting. I grew up in Africa, and storytelling is very much a part of our
Mm,
culture. Every lesson I learned in life was always wrapped in a story. My grandmother was the most amazing storyteller. She could hold you in the palm of her hands with her stories. So you were looking for a common thread between you and all of these people that you interviewed.
mm,
What did you find?
mm. I think there were so many lessons that I learned throughout doing this work and still learning very much. Um, I think a big part of the work that I was doing in general and thinking about is when I think about contribution, when I think about contribution back to the world, back to communities and society, I think probably when I went into doing Storyo work, or even thinking back 3 years ago, I went in with a bit of a helpy attitude, like I want to help people. And I think what I learned through just listening to the wisdom of all these amazing people that I've interviewed and just through doing the work is that people don't need to be helped. People want to be loved and celebrated. And a lot of the times society created or upheld barriers that I guess prevented people from going to civic spaces or from, um, being in leadership roles or whatever it is. And for a lot of society, we just need to get out of their people's way and to remove the barriers. And I feel like this healthy attitude could really hurt you or hurt society because people can come with a bit of an ego when it's about you and you want to help versus it's about the other person. So I think really deeply listening to other people's stories really helped me understand myself that it's not about me. It's actually about us as a collective healing together, doing the work together, celebrating each other and our own stories. And that's how we will sort of collectively rise. Yeah.
I love that. The thing about storytelling as well for me is that they say that if a tree falls in a forest and nobody sees it, did it really fall?
Mm,
So, unless we give air and breath to our stories and we create the safe spaces for them to be heard,
mm,
a lot of people can go through life with no idea what other people's lives are really like.
mhm, mhm,
So, I have always experienced that every single person is a door into another world. Until you listen to somebody's story, you never really know the path they've walked, the challenges they've had, the triumphs they've overcome. Of all of the stories you've curated, which one would be the most memorable and why?
Oh, I actually love that what you said before, Gertrude, around huh. I think a lot of the times when it comes to like let's say news reporting or media, or even like let's say things like talks on the stage, we highlight the positive, and that's what story is about. It's changing the way we currently portray stories. I feel like a lot of the stories is a highlight of something either really heroic or beautiful and wonderful and big, or a highlight of some challenges and struggle, which is needed for different purposes. But I feel like most of the life happens not at those extremes. Most of the life happens at the ordinary, the people going through, going to work, maybe experiencing something at home or feeling something inside. And because we're constantly exposed to, through our phones and media, to the either direct extreme of like, here's a person who is really struggling and went through all those things, or here is some person who's built amazing company and successful. We compare ourselves to those two extremes and we always feel like we're either not good enough or we feel bad about feeling bad because look, these people have it worse than us. So I think a lot about Storyo is bringing in just sort of almost everyday stories. Like, what do you experience? What do you feel challenged by? What are you vulnerable? What are you pondering about? So I think a lot of the times what I really, really love is like sitting down when someone sends me a story and just reading as if you're talking to a friend, and there doesn't have to be some major ups or downs. It's just reading the like what is their day-to-day life is like, you know? And I probably, it's really hard for me to nail down like, you know, one or two, because I always try when someone asks me, and there's just every single one is just like, you know, just so wonderful. I can probably give example of which is I often give, of my friend, Maria Polishuk. She is a friend of mine, close friend of mine, and I interviewed her about her work and life, and she doesn't have much online presence. So all the stuff that she was saying was for the kind of for the first time to the world. And she talked about her work. She worked in social, she's a social worker, and she worked in the hospital, and she used to work with foster care with kids. And she kind of, I guess, just kind of shared like a day-to-day like life, the amazing work that she does, that is just a daily work for her, that she might not feel like a hero. But for me reading it, it was like, oh my God, you're doing wonderful, you're contributing so much. But then also her internal dialogue of, she's been really struggling with this work, it's very emotionally taxing, so coming home and bringing it in. Yeah, I just loved, you know, she's a close friend of mine, and but I read that, like, and I think she wrote like 10 pages of stuff, and it was just so, I just felt like I got to know her on such a deeper level, and it felt very, yeah, very special.
Fantastic. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And this is an invitation to all of you who are out there who feel that you have something to share with the world. I believe that we change the story one person at a time, one woman at a time. So we're looking for more stories for our next online summit. It will be at the last week of November. Go onto our website and please register. So, what creative ways have you been using to spread and share your stories? You know, you come from another generation, a generation that knows how to use technology much better than I ever will. How are you getting your stories out there?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, you know, it's interesting. I was pondering about this today, because at the core of it, I think what I was talking about before, I would love to see a shift in society where we listen to longer form interviews or longer form stories, to really get to know someone, to really get to experience all the in between. Like, I think what social media is doing a lot right now is it's giving us highlights, right? So it's really easy to do we will do a quick highlights, a quick quotes and snippets, which, you know, catches your attention, right? It's kind of meant to do that. And it could be, I guess, good, but what I'm experiencing, you know, as again as a millennial, is that I'm constantly, there's so much attraction, everything is like, so what I would love to do, and what I'm trying to do, is how to change that to a more longer form. Let's listen to people's stories. Let's read the longer interview. It doesn't have to be all about challenge or something amazing happen. It just can be a, you know, it can be here as well. It doesn't have to be up or down. So, and it's been hard, because it's a hard thing for me myself. Like, I'm very, you know, addicted. I also have it, you know, all of us, I guess, are in some way or another, like to phones and scrolling and stuff. So how do I uncondition myself so then to help that share the content like this way? So what I've been really doing recently is, actually, I know social media is one great outlet, or like, you know, there's YouTube, there's TikTok, there's Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all these different channels. But I've really been enjoying consuming content or like watching things together with people. Like, it's the classic old school going to a movie together and watching something, and then reflecting on it as a group. Because when you watch someone's story being told and something vulnerable or important or whatnot, you can almost feel that in the room how people react together. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is like, how do I create the small pockets, whether it's an event that we organize or whether it's a workshop where I present something and we watch it together with people.
So it becomes a shared experience and you're in the same space experiencing it together. Now, with the challenge of COVID, we have had to resort to digital platforms to connect and, like you're saying, create those safe spaces for these stories to be heard. How are you finding that transition from in-person events to doing things online?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those, right? When you're online, it's so easy to, like, you're listening to something and then, I'll quickly go to my email and check my emails. I'll quickly go to my Facebook and check my messages. And we all think that we are good at multitasking, but multitasking is actually a really bad thing. It just means that we are not doing any of the things well, and we're not paying our full attention to those things. So I think it's really easy to get distracted in this space. So, but an example that we've done recently, for example, 2 days ago, we had a premiere on YouTube. It was we watched the video together. We were supposed to have an event in person, and it got postponed, and then got cancelled. And I organized like a YouTube premiere of a series where I've interviewed 8 women founders, about their stories. And it was a 25-minute video, so quite, it's a longer one rather than like a quick 5-minute snippet. And I invited people to come and like join on YouTube live premiere. So at 7 p.m. there was a countdown, similar to the one we've had here. And then we all watched it together, and there was a little live chat, and people could say what they're thinking or feeling. And I've kind of treated it as an event. Like, I invited people personally, messaged them, or reached out to people, said, hey, you should come and join us. And it was just the most wonderful experience. People send me photos of them sitting, on the couch, drinking a evening tea or whatever wine, and like watching it on their TV and chatting in the chat together. And we had like 50 people joining in to watch it, and it was just the most heartfelt experience. So I guess obviously it would be nicer to be in the same room, but it's because we can't. It almost felt like we were in the same room, and it was just wonderful.
We're having to do things this way for a reason. Again, just to stay connected to our communities, keep people energized and motivated and positive. And I think that sharing collectively is different from somebody watching it completely on their own. So how do you find the people you interview? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's been to be honest, like for the first maybe half a year, it was mainly just friends. I just wanted to reach out to friends around me. And then we asked every person to suggest someone. So the last question of the written interview was, who else would you want to hear from? And that could be anyone. They could say a president, or I mean, we don't have prime minister in New Zealand, or they could say a friend of mine. And kind of through that way, I guess I've then reached out to people sometimes saying, hey, so and so say that they would love to hear from you. Could we do an interview? And I think there was this interesting mixture of like people suggesting, oh, you should interview someone who's a bit more known, who has more following or whatever, or more popular online or whatever it is, because then you'll get attraction to this platform. But I think it was interesting because I kind of disagreed with it. Again, I felt like the stories that we need more of is the people around us, like celebrating people around us and their stories. So we really just try to go with sometimes I'll meet a random person, I will talk to them, like someone's like, hey, by the way, meet so and so, she's my cousin. She has a question for you about this job that she's doing. And I'll be like, hey, do you wanna actually, you sound really interesting and cool, and I've never met you, and I would love to ask you all those deep questions. So it's been a mixture of people I know, people who get recommended, people who I just randomly hear about and I reach out to them, and a few people I've interviewed who are maybe a bit more known in New Zealand, so we reached out to them. and try to ask them questions that are different, that are not something that they get always asked on all the platforms, but something that is they haven't spoken about much. Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. So where do you see this project going in the future? If you were to teleport you into the future,
Yeah.
and you're 100 years old and you've curated thousands and thousands of stories, what would you say to the future you? Where are you seeing this going?
Yeah, I mean, I probably will answer in one way. That's something that I've been trying to cultivate more and more recently is working with a coach of mine in this other program where we talk about a lot of indigenous ways of being and wisdom, and how like having a concrete plan could be a very Western idea. And that's something that I've always I'm like, I need to know exactly what I'm doing. But I'm trying to, I guess in a way, in the last 3 months, like trying to let go of that a little bit. And what I'm thinking of doing is I'm the way my friend described it to me is you have like a torch and you're in the forest. And the only way to get out of the forest is to like just see what's in front of you and take a step and do your best and take a step. So I know it might be not the most exciting answer, but I guess I'm doing a lot of work at the moment, and I'm seeing what things what things spark more joy, or what things have like, oh, this one had a actually really good it really resonated with someone. Oh, we should follow up on that, and just kind of trying to go this way. So I'm hoping that when I'm 100 years old, I can look back and say I'm glad that I trusted myself and the universe to sort of figure out the path for this. But yeah, I'll stick with this answer.
You're really letting the stories guide you to where you're supposed to go with them, correct? And
Kinda,
not
yeah,
being
yeah, and it's really scary. It's really scary because it feels very, it's not natural. And especially when everyone, like even your friends or whatever, like, oh, what are you doing? And I've been, working, whatever you want to call it, more than I have like on Storyo in so long. Like I'm spending all my day because I took a break from work, and I've been spending just like all my time every weekend, every evening. I'm like thinking, or like doing some work. But I think I'm not trying to have a very concrete like plan. I have a vision and a purpose for what I want the stories to contribute to in the world, but how they do it is hopefully
yeah. The how will kind of work itself out.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take another commercial break. I do want to acknowledge one of our sponsors. Skinny Teas is based in Detroit, Michigan. Linda Schlesinger is the entrepreneur who has sponsored the Her Story magazine for this month. Linda, thank you so much. Your contribution is absolutely priceless. And again, to those of you who have a story to share, go onto our website, register, take part in the next online summit, which will be in last week of November. Welcome back, everybody. It's not every day that I meet somebody who has a passion for storytelling like me. And I've got to tell you, I'm really excited with what you're putting together in New Zealand, and excited too to see how we could create some kind of collaboration. My database now has almost 10,000 women in 45 countries. And it's just exciting to see that cross-cultural exchange. Now, you come from a completely different culture. I come from a completely different culture. We both found ourselves living in New Zealand. What would you say was the biggest culture shock for you when you got to New Zealand?
Yeah. Oh, I was 16 when I came here on my own, and I lived in a homestay family. And I don't know if it was like a culture shock, or I just remember feeling, hmm, maybe it was the homestay family specifically. They were really particular with how, like, really, it just felt less emotionally connected, if that makes sense. As I said before, I think Kazakhstan culture is just so emotional. And sometimes, to be honest, I like it can go to extremes of, it also stems from a lot of patriarchy and corruption. So there is obviously that's rooted in some other things that need to move on from the culture. But I think I was just so used to, like, if you love someone, you really love, you show it to them, you talk to them. If you're upset with something, you talk it out. It's very, like, talking culture, very. And I felt like New Zealand was a bit more reserved and closed and less vulnerable and less open. um I think now it was probably, first exposure. I've definitely met so many friends here now and amazing people, a lot of migrants as well, or, like, people who are sort of bicultural or multicultural that live here, that I wouldn't say it's my experience now. I'll say I'm surrounded by people who are amazingly open, and amazingly vulnerable. And I guess I'm in storytelling, which is also leads to that as well. But yeah, I remember when I first came, it just felt a bit. I was feeling like, ooh, like a stranger, like, ooh, everyone is to themselves, and what are they thinking about. Yeah.
I have to say, my biggest culture shock, there were two. The first one was the lack of people.
Mm.
I come from a continent where there's a lot of people, and just walking on the streets of Wellington without rubbing shoulders with people, I almost felt like a fish out of water. Very, very
Mm.
strange experience if you come from a country where there's a lot of people and you're suddenly immersed into a country where there's hardly anyone. There's more sheep in
Yeah.
New Zealand than there are people, right? That was the first thing. The second thing that I experienced was having to explain who I am for the last
Mm.
21 years. It doesn't matter what day it is, it doesn't matter what time, because I look so different.
Mm.
People ask me, where are you from? And I consider myself as
Mm.
a Kiwi. I've been there for so long, but I
Mm.
can't really claim it because I look different. I don't know if you've had the similar
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, for sure. I guess, like, I was surrounded by a lot of international students and stuff when I came here. So it was definitely that, but also I was around many people who were migrants. So maybe a bit of a less because we were all from different countries. So people were,
Yeah.
used to everyone being from everywhere else. But actually, I really relate to your first point. Um, that's probably, so as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my God, that's right. I felt very, like, back home, even though so Kazakhstan is like ninth biggest country in the world, but our population is quite small comparatively to the size. Yet the cities are really populated. So I lived in this tiny apartment with my mom and my brothers, and, like, in this kind of suburbs, but we don't really have suburbs. Everything is like there's people everywhere. There's apartment buildings everywhere. So come in here, and you can walk out, like, where I live. I live almost in the city center, but I can walk like 5 minutes up the road, and I can stand there and I will not see a person for like 30
Yes.
minutes. And that will never happen back home. Let's, like, if maybe at 4 a.m. or something, but you're never alone in the street. You're never, like, walking,
Yes.
so yeah, I think I'm used to it now in New Zealand. I'm quite used to like, no people. But when I first came here, I remember, especially in suburbs, you're walking around and you're thinking, did
Where is
where's
everyone?
everyone? Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I experienced was the lack of color.
Mm.
So Kiwis think black is a color. Everybody wears black or navy blue. And in Africa, you only wear black if you're going to a funeral.
Mm.
So it took me a long time to get used to the darkness of the colors that people wear.
Mhm.
It was actually quite depressing, to be quite honest. It took me a good 10 years to get used to it. So that was something that I experienced coming to this part of the world.
We definitely need more color here, that's for sure.
Well, this has been an interesting interview. Thank you so much for coming online. So, where can people find these stories? Tell us all of your social media handles and platforms.
Yes. Oh, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's so wonderful to talk to you. So we have a website called Storyo, STORYO.co.nz. It's the same on Facebook and same on LinkedIn and same on Instagram. It's just at storyo.co or .co.nz. But if you Google the storyo.co.nz, all the social medias are there, all the stories. Please feel free to check them out. They're wonderful and amazing.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for coming online and sharing your story. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. It's always warms my heart when I see someone else who has a passion for storytelling, passion for spreading these amazing people who sometimes their voices and their stories will never be heard. So have a fantastic evening, day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing story. And thank you again. Absolutely wonderful to have had you on the show.
Thank
Bye
you
for
so
now,
much.
everybody.